Hey, Chicago Fire fans, welcome back to the Feed the Fire podcast. I'm your host, Nick. I hope you all had a happy, safe, memorable, meaningful Memorial Day and remembering why we have this holiday, not just another day off work, but to remember the sacrifices that all of those in the armed forces made to allow us to have the freedoms we do have in this country. So with that message being said, we are recapping the Chicago Fire's 3-3 draw against New England and taking a look forward to their midweek matchup against Toronto FC. We got a lot of goals to talk about in that New England game, so let's get right into it. On Saturday, May 27th, the Fire played New England in New England to a 3-3 draw. And right now, there are two kinds of Chicago Fire fans. The glass half full, as I'm calling them, and the glass half empty, right? The glass half full, the optimists. Hey, we're playing a lot better. We just took a point on the road to the third best team in the Eastern Conference. And then there's the pessimists. And this is where I usually tend to fall, mostly just from my own personality and growing up a Chicago sports fan. But it's the glass half empty approach of, yeah, but the Fire blew two leads in this game, one of 2 goals and one of a goal, and they still can't mark set pieces. So which Fire fan are you? Are you the optimist who's like, point on the road, that's how you do it? Or are you more like me where, oh boy, we blew a 2-goal lead and a 1-goal lead. Unbelievable. Well, let's talk about it. Maybe this episode will help you kind of decide where you're at right now, or are you just in the middle and along for the ride? That's fair too. So to start, the Fire actually had a bit of a formation shift in this match. Instead of their typical 4-2-3-1, they started a 3-man back line with 4 midfielders and then 1 attacking midfielder, Xherdan Shaqiri, and then our 2 strikers, Przybylko and Koutsias up top. Now, the 3-man back line had Pineda, the newly signed, extended new contract Mauricio Pineda as our center back, Wyatt Olmsberg on the left back, and then Kendall Burks as our right back. And this was in large part due to player availability, with Turan being out injured, with Chihos still kind of nursing a few knocks that he's picked up and not at 100%, playing hurt, as Klopas said a couple games back. So they really needed to rest those guys. And whenever Turan gets back, hopefully it's sooner rather than later. But then, of course, we see Pineda go out through concussion protocol. He took a shot to the head. I think the ball hit him in the head. And then they had to shift later in the game to a 4-man back line, back to that 4-2-3-1 to try and hold on to the lead. So this initial formation was as much out of necessity as it was a bit of a tactical wrinkle. I think we saw Klopas want to try to control the midfield, and that's why you saw Jairo Torres getting the start in what typically is a Gaston Jimenez Federico Navarro center midfield pairing. Now, Fede Navarro was out serving his red card suspension, and we're not going to rehash that discussion because that just makes me depressed to think how he picked up those 2 terrible yellow cards and the way the referee gave him out. But anyway, we see Jairo Torres coming in instead of, say, a Fabian Herbers or another midfielder off their bench, a Casas or someone like that. So we see Jairo Torres now getting worked into the starting lineup a bit, trying to help with that possession in the midfield or those quick counterattacks that they pulled off in this game. And you'll hear John Donovan mention it a little bit as our featured guest about halfway through the show. Now, here's what head coach Frank Klopas said about using the 3-man back line and a double pivot in his post-game presser. Quote, "It's just the way we wanted to build our play up in possession. They had 2 forwards. We had the advantage in the back with the 3. We boxed the midfield. They were in a diamond in the first 35, 40 minutes. We had the advantage playing out of the back. We always set the advantage in the middle with our pivots. When we played that and we switched the point of attack, we always set really good triangles and numerical advantage once we moved the ball. And yeah, for me, there was no issue with that at all." End quote. So we're getting, again, I'll say it again, we're getting a lot more tactical analysis from Frank Klopas than we ever got from Ezra Henriksen. And we're also seeing Klopas is actually doing some scouting here, saying, hey, we knew they're going to come out with 2 forwards. That's how they like to play. So this is going to give us an advantage in the formation rather than just running out the same 4-2-3-1 and same substitution patterns that we saw under Ezra Henriksen. So these are the little changes that Klopas is doing that look to be getting a little bit more out of the Chicago Fire roster. And speaking of getting more out of the Chicago Fire roster, no one's play has improved since the coaching change more so than Xherdan Shaqiri. And John Donovan's going to talk about it, but but he's right. There must have been something going on between Shaqiri and Hendrickson, and maybe it's just Klopas is saying, dude, you've won Champions League. Like, I'm going to put you in the middle of the field. You do what you do. Go find the game. Be where you need to be. Don't get stuck dropping back too far in defense. Spring the counterattack, and I'll let you run the way you want to run, right? Both literally run the way you want to run and figuratively run the team, run your plays the way you want to run. So maybe that freedom has been much better for Shaqiri. Now, let's jump into the goals. We got 6 of them to talk about. We'll use these as some talking points to kind of get into some other stuff with the Chicago Fire. Now, the Chicago Fire opened the scoring, none other than Georgios Koutsias, my fellow countryman. Even though I'm Hellenic American and he's straight from Greece, I'm gonna start claiming him. Absolutely. Goal scored in the 10th minute. Great counterattacking goal, and this is again kind of what we want to see the Chicago Fire playing, and I think this is how they wanted to play throughout this season. Przybylko drops deep when New England has the ball. Not that I'm a fan of him doing that, and I've been critical of him doing that, but in this case, he's the second striker with Koutsias, or he's one of 2 strikers with Koutsias, right? Not that lone striker in a 4-2-3-1 who needs to be playing as far up the field as he can and be an outlet. But in this case, you've got Koutsias on the other side of the field who can push forward, and Przybylko can kind of pinch back. For you hockey fans, yeah, use the phrase pinch in, right? Where your forwards are coming back and helping out on defense here. It's exactly what Przybylko is doing. Gets in the passing lane on the right side of the pitch, gets the turnover, immediately lays it off to Shaqiri. And that just shows you he's not trying to do too much. The team is just saying, get the ball to Shaq and see what he can do, right? And Shaqiri then can play it as he sees fit. And in this case, he takes one touch to control it, and then a beautiful left-footed lob over the top to Koutsias. He's able to get behind the defense, hold off the defenders, and slot it home. But the best part of this play is the growing relationship between the Swiss and the Greek, between Shaqiri and Koutsias here. Because as soon as Shaqiri gets the ball, Koutsias is off to the races, dead sprint. He knows what to expect from a soccer standpoint. But from a personal standpoint, after the goal, Koutsias is celebrating with his teammates. But then when Shaqiri shows up, he lets out a big yell and a big smile, and it's a big hug, and Shaqiri is responding in the kind, right? It's great. And even interim manager Frank Klopas sees it. When asked about Koutsias, Klopas first brings up Shaqiri. Quote, look, we knew that we'd have opportunities in transition. It's something that we talked about and we prepared in our game plan. And, once we got the ball with Shaq and they pushed numbers forward, and then our ability in transition to break the first line, and if we could find Shaq where he was able to turn and have runs behind, we knew we would get opportunities like that, end quote. So he talks about Koutsias by first mentioning Shaqiri and their game plan. He continues. Great start. He had a very good game, obviously, and a great finish there, but he helped the team. He worked extremely hard. He's just going to continue to develop and get better and better. We used him out wide almost as a second forward coming in, and yeah, he showed a lot of composure with that finish. You see his pace getting behind. So he's a young player that's going to grow, and he definitely doesn't lack confidence, like I said, and obviously scored 2 goals now in 2 games. His first start, he did really well, and he's just got to continue to push in the right way, and he's just going to get better and better. End quote. I expect to see a lot more of Georgios Koutsias being employed by Frank Klopas and co., and I can't wait to see what else he's going to do. Now, in the 22nd minute, the Fire go up 2-0 on an own goal from Farrell. Now, a similar play to the first goal. Przybylko pinches back a bit, kind of puts some pressure, forces New England to turn it over to Shaqiri, who again immediately hits a switch to Koutsias. Now, in this case, Koutsias was not as central, so he couldn't run directly at the goal and get a shot off. He was more off to the left, but Miguel Navarro reads it, makes the overlapping run. Koutsias lays it off. Navarro whips in a low, hard cross, and it takes a deflection off a retreating Farrell. Now, everyone's got to know when you are playing defense, if you're running back towards your goal, there's so little you can do when the ball comes right at you where it won't be an own goal. Like, your momentum is taking you back towards the goal. You've got to get in a better position. In this case, Farrell was late getting back. But what's cool about this is what Miguel Navarro brings, that overlap, that speed, that crossing ability that's been a little underrated this season, probably because he's still making some boneheaded plays, picking up some temper-driven yellow cards. And it's going to be the big question of the offseason, whether or not the Chicago Fire try to invest in their back line or they stick with Navarro, Suke, Aceves, whether or not they extend his loan or make it permanent. these kind of guys, or if they're going to go in a different direction, depending on who their next manager is. Something to keep an eye on. Now, New England gets on the board with Noel Buck just smashing one from about 22 yards out. It was a banger here, and I think a lot of people are voting it goal of the week, right? Now, this goal is mostly due to Noel Buck just having a rip and a quality finish, but it is in part due to the Fire's poor transition defense, which has been a theme this season. Go to Glass House Soccer on Twitter and look at the picture that I tweeted out. I snipped right before the ball gets played to Noel Buck and he takes a couple touches and shoots. And you'll see that the 4 Fire defenders are converging on the ball and allowing all of the New England attackers to get behind them. And that through ball gets to Buck, and he's able to have nothing but space and time and finds the back of the net. Now, in the 40th minute, Bobby Wood, yes, that Bobby Wood, scores off of a corner kick. The ball is played to the near post, flicked on by Christian McCoon, and Wood finds the gap in the Fire's marking. Rises up, heads it to the far upper corner. Nothing Chris Brady could do. Wood could have placed that ball anywhere. Brady had to say central, and by the time he knows where the ball is going, it is too late. Now, failing to defend set pieces, again, has been a signature of the Chicago Fire team this season, and we as fans now are starting to see that maybe it's the marking scheme. They've been playing a lot of zone marking, and you saw the Chicago Fire line up just straight down the 6-yard line on this one. All the defenders were just right down the 6-yard line. They were ball watching, not marking men. So they are zonal marking, and they are not responding to where the attacking players are. And in this case, when it's flicked on like that by the near post runner, by Christian McCoon, they cannot adjust because they're watching the ball and it's too late. If they're marking men or marking a zone, then if they're marking men instead of marking a zone, then they can read their man and follow him and at least get a challenge up. If you watch the replay, Bobby Wood is the only player who jumps on an outswinging corner. It's ridiculous that no Fire player actually jumped toward the ball or even put a body on Bobby Wood. Free headers, and yeah, he ain't the same young buck he used to be, but Bobby Wood is still good enough to put this on frame and score. Now, the Fire regained the lead late in the 79th minute off a Maren Haile-Selassie strike. Another goal off a turnover and counter. Now, let me just ask a question to the podcast community here, to our YouTube community. Are you all concerned that the Chicago Fire are having a difficult time maintaining possession and trying to build an attack? Or are you totally fine with them counterattacking and scoring that way? Message me, email me at glasshousesoccer@gmail.com. Direct messages on Twitter are open. I mean, we're even on Facebook, all at Glasshouse Soccer. Let me know what you think, because personally, I'm okay with the counterattacking style as long as the Fire commit to it and know that that's what they're going to do. That's how they want to play. And hey, they dropped 3 on New England. So if they can do that, then I'm okay with it. But the key to this Haile-Selassie goal was the turnover, the quick ball into the middle, gets to Kai Kamara, who draws in most of the defense. And if you watch the replay, I don't know if Kai purposely taps it over to Selassie or if he just kind of he can't get to the ball, so he's just shielding it and trying to let it roll through, and it takes a deflection off his foot. I'll give Kai the benefit of the doubt. He was credited with an assist, so we'll say that. But then Selassie, with such great instinct and technique, to one-time it with the left foot to the near post corner. Beautiful. However, as we've seen the Fire do over and over again, late game, set piece. This time, it's Jozy Altidore to equalize in the 83rd minute. Another goal conceded off a corner kick. And for the Fire, this falls mostly on Aceves. He just looked lost on the far post there for the Chicago Fire. But I won't say it was all his fault, because he ended up having to mark 2 men. There was Jozy Altidore, and I forget who the other New England player was. It may have been Vrioni. He had to pick him up. And he had to pick one of those 2 guys to mark, pick the wrong guy. The ball gets flicked on. Again, no Fire player are challenging this ball in the air, or any of the New England players bodying them up, just trying to throw them off a little bit. The ball ends up getting flicked on almost in the goal itself off the flick, and Altidore just taps it in. Again, nothing Chris Brady could do. Aceves ended up marking the wrong man. He ended up marking the man on the far side the further behind him instead of marking Jozy Altidore in front of him. So he made the wrong choice. But the rest of the Fire defense, again, were in that zone marking scheme where they're just lined up on the 6-yard and nobody knows who's going to get the ball. And every time it's the New England player flicking it on. So that's what they got to work on in training this week. If they're going to have training this week, it's a quick turnaround to a Wednesday night game against Toronto, and then Saturday, and then U.S. Open Cup on Tuesday. So we'll see if film sessions are going to be enough for the Fire here. A couple other quick notes on the Fire before we take our halftime break. Chris Mueller out for the remainder of the season after arthroscopic hip surgery. We knew he had been out nursing a hip injury for a while, and they finally got the right diagnosis of it, I suppose. Not that I know what that is, but he ended up with an arthroscopic hip surgery. By all accounts, it's gone well, and he just needs the rest of the season to recover. Additionally, Mauricio Pineda was in concussion protocol coming out of this game in the 61st minute, resulting in Chijos having to come on in and did cut some of his recovery shorter here, and we'll see how fit he is for Wednesday night game. I don't know if Pineda is going to be able to get out of the concussion protocol at that time, but that's up to the team doctors and the MLS protocols. Now, before we look ahead to the matchup against TFC, we're going to take a short break for our featured guest, John Donovan, here on the podcast side of things. So we're going to pause on YouTube. Make sure you follow along on Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts. So for now, John, take it away. John, thank you so much for your input on the Chicago Fire. Always great to have your commentary and your thoughts. And I really wish you a speedy recovery on the broken wrist. Sorry to hear that. I hope you weren't punching something in anger at the Chicago Fire, blowing 2 leads in this game, but a speedy recovery to you, my friend. And a reminder to all of our viewers and listeners, Feed the Fire is brought to you by Skira Icelandic Spring Water. Icelandic for clear, Skira water comes from a spring in a government-protected nature preserve in Iceland with naturally low mineral content. This isn't your average water, clearly, pun intended. It's one of the best. And again, thank you to John and Skira for always being a supporter of the Feed the Fire podcast. Now let's take a look ahead to the next matchup this Wednesday against Toronto FC. The Fire are traveling up north to BMO Field. Hope their passports are in order because they're going to need everyone if they're going to want to come back with 3 points against the likes of TFC. Now, TFC, though, like the Fire, have struggled so far this season, and like the Fire, their fans were questioning whether the return to the playoffs is an attainable goal this season. TFC has been without at least one of their star Italians, Bernardeschi or Insigne, for most of the season. One of them always seems to be hurt or out, which has really hampered their efforts. And Sean Johnson just hasn't been playing to that top-tier goalkeeper level as he had been playing with NYCFC or even with the U.S. national team. But also people are speculating head coach Bob Bradley is unable to adapt his style of play to the roster or just be that great coach that we have seen him be in the past, whether it's the Metro Stars or the Fire, or whether it's when he was successful with the USMNT, but he just doesn't seem to have it with TFC so far this season. Also, Bradley held Bernardeschi out of the last match, coach's decision that he didn't play after Bernardeschi called out Bob Bradley for not having an identity or not having a style of play. Go and find his quotes because they were pretty harsh. He's like, he said something along the lines of, when we don't have an idea of what we're doing, I can't play like that. I'm not effective if we don't have an idea of how we want to play. So, yep, straight up taking a shot at Bradley and got benched for it. We'll see if he is back for this game against the Fire, and if he is, how much. Now, looking at TFC kind of more in depth here, their record overall, 3 wins, 5 losses, 7 draws, but at home, 3 wins, 1 loss, and 4 draws. So they're much better at home. Now, no one player on Toronto is kind of dominating goals or assists, but a lot of their play, in fact, the bulk of their offense is either running through Richie Laryea or through Bernardeschi. Now, Laryea is top 3 on the team in ball progression numbers, passing or dribbling, is 4th on the team in expected assists or key passes, depending on which metric system you're using here. And again, if it's not Laryea, it's Bernardeschi. Bernardeschi also is top 3 or 4 on TFC in all these advanced categories. And if Bernardeschi is not going to be playing this much due to coaching decision or otherwise, it will place much more of the burden on Insigne and Osorio. Now, Insigne is coming off of his best statistical performance, and maybe his best overall performance in a TFC jersey, assisting their 2 goals in their latest victory. And Jonathan Osorio, we know his potential. Is he finally back into his groove, and can he live up to that potential? Those guys also towards the top of TFC's roster in offensive categories, right? So those are the guys you're going to have to look out for. And if any of them are off, then the Fire could take advantage of this road game and come back with at least a point. So where can the Fire take advantage? Assuming those guys are on. TFC typically play a 4-3-3, but Bob Bradley has tinkered with a 3-4-3 or a 4-2-3-1 over the last few games. Toronto is one of the better passing teams in MLS, and this is according to the website fbref.com, but they are near the bottom of the league in shot creating actions. So all these passes, all these progressions, all this possession, and they are one of the lowest shot creating teams in the league. Maybe Bernardeschi was onto something there, Bob Bradley. Maybe the Italian star might also know a little bit something about the game. If I'm the Fire, then get into a good defensive shape, prevent those counterattacks and transition moments, mark on your set pieces, force those turnovers and counterattack like you did against New England. I don't know if they're going to come out with a back 3 like they did against New England, and maybe you bring Chihos in and then split Pineda and Olmsberg out wide, because I'm still not there with Burks. I mean, if you got Insigne or Bernardeschi or heck, even Laryea or Osorio running at Kendall Burks, I don't know if I'm going to favor the Fire defender in that one. But if they stick with a similar game plan to New England, which, you know, if TFC does have 2 strikers up top, or with this short week, are you really going to try and change things up that much? Then maybe you keep the same game plan, and you could take advantage of it with some counter-attacking play. Again, I just hope they can defend those few corners and steal a win on the road, though if you're going to be glass half full, you take the point on the road against the conference foe. Now let's look at some of the odds and predictions here, right? The odds according to BetMGM, and this is Monday evening, has TFC at plus 105, the draw tie at plus 250, and the Fire at plus 240. So again, this match, according to the odds makers on BetMGM, is as likely to end in a draw as it is a Chicago Fire victory. TFC just slightly better odds, though not a clear favorite in this one at plus 105, almost a straight bet for TFC to win. Probably not a lot of value in this one. Here's a little trivia, though, that may sway some money onto TFC. 9 of Chicago's 14 MLS matches this season have seen a result-changing goal scored in the final 15 minutes, including conceding late equalizers in each of their last 2 matches, a pair of 3-3 draws. The Fire have lost 13 points from winning positions this season. Let me read that again so it sinks in. The Fire have lost 13 points from winning positions this season, more than any other team in MLS. And that trivia is from MLSsoccer.com. So based on the odds, based on that little bit of trivia that we just heard, based on everything that's been going on, the short weeks, the turnarounds, and the fact that if Bernardeschi plays, he's probably going to be one of the most well-rested players on the pitch, I just can't pick the Fire to win. I'm going to go with a 2-1 TFC victory here. Sorry, Fire fans. I'm telling you, I'm glass half empty. I am that pessimist until the Fire actually start winning games. Few other notes from around the league, some notable results. Charlotte beats the Galaxy 1-0. The Galaxy in shambles. Go find the video on Twitter or on social media where just several Galaxy players are standing by the supporters section just having it handed to them. Or maybe it's a coaching moment from the fans, but the Galaxy are in shambles. I think I heard they even met with supporters. I don't know if that was the video just on the pitch or if there was an official meeting, but not looking good in Carson. Sporting Kansas City, 4-1 victors over the Timbers, and they even conceded first. Did Kansas City just need to get healthy? Are the Peter Vermees detractors starting to have to walk back a little bit, or is this just a blip and Kansas City can't sustain it? We will see. Now, Nashville also with a big 3-1 victory against Columbus after, again, conceding first. And this was a huge result for Eastern Conference standings because right now we have Cincinnati and Nashville in the 1-2 spot, New England and Philly in the 3rd and 4th spots in the East, with the Fire in 12th. Out west, we've got Seattle, St. Louis, LAFC, and Dallas as your top 4 teams. So keep an eye on them. And we'll see what these midweek games, as we start to get into some of the warmer weather in spring and summer, will do to the MLS standings. And with that, I want to say thank you again to our sponsor, Skira Icelandic Spring Water, available at your local 7-Eleven. Big thanks to John Donovan and a speedy recovery to your broken wrist. Make sure you follow on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, follow along on social media, and above all, let's go Fire.